Hello. Today we're celebrating the first Sunday of Advent. Our first reading is from Jeremiah chapter 33 verses 14 to 16. Our psalm is Psalm 25. Our second reading is from 1 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 12 through chapter 4 verse 2. And our gospel is from the Gospel of Luke chapter 21 verse 25 to 28 and verses 34 and 36. Jesus speaks in our gospel today about our hearts growing drowsy, about his second coming sneaking up on us. But what does it really mean for our hearts to grow drowsy? Well, it means that we stop living with a heart like Jesus's, one that loves unconditionally, one that forgives over and over and over. How many times? 7? No, 70 times 7. Infinitely forgives. A heart that cares for the least of those among us, even when we don't have to. A heart that welcomes the stranger, the refugee, the immigrant, even when we don't want to. Even when it doesn't benefit our national agenda. Even when we don't think immigrants are what will make America great again. I mean, do we really believe that immigrants made us great once, but that was all they had in them? I mean, I guess some of us do think that. And besides, those were white immigrants, right? Not these brown-skinned ones we have these days. I mean, really, what would white Jesus do if he were constantly confronted by dark-skinned people? What indeed? But anyway, if our hearts can grow drowsy, if they can stop being a heart like Jesus's, if our hearts can stop caring about the things and the people that Jesus said that we should care about, well, what would cause them to grow drowsy? Jesus says carousing, drunkenness, anxieties of daily life can cause our hearts to grow drowsy. Now, I know that sounds like a stick-in-the-mud response, something that my Southern Baptist mother would say. But like most things your mama told you, it is true. Because when we're out carousing, drinking and laughing, getting loud a little bit, are we doing it with the guy that always ends up making black jokes, or Mexican jokes, or Muslim jokes? Are we with our friend who gets drunk and starts talking about all those closeted gay guys down at her work? Are we with the misogynistic a-hole who invariably grabs the waitress's backside 3 drinks into the evening, or invites her out to the truck, at which point we have to start worrying about spit in our food? Are we that person? Just when we're cutting loose with our friends, letting our hair down a little bit, telling jokes and swapping stories, all our exploits, all our conquests, all the places we grabbed them. Back from when we were still sowing our oats. Are you uncomfortable? I know that I am. Michael Voris's haircut is. A lot of us are just out there living our best life, not meaning any harm. You snowflakes are all too sensitive. But the more time we spend with a drowsy heart, letting it drift away from being like Jesus' heart, the harder it is to recognize him when he comes to us. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Who the bleep is Michael Voris? Well, Google him and then get back to me about that hairdo. The other thing that you're thinking, from way up there on that wagon, is that this drunkenness and carousing doesn't apply to me. And you're right, sobriety does fix that a lot of the time. But Jesus says the anxieties of daily life can cause our hearts to be drowsy as well. The stresses of life, work, money, social status, politics, family squabbles, all contribute to our hearts feeling drowsy, unable or unwilling to love like Jesus loves. We spend so much energy just trying to deal with our own problems that our heart doesn't have the ability to care about other people's problems. It's easier to just ignore the suffering around us, like the priest and the Levite on the road, rather than stop and be the Good Samaritan to help someone in need. So many of our priests and self-appointed Levites, the guardians of the faith, prey on our anxieties, working to harden our hearts against the LGBT community and divorcees and cafeteria Catholics and anyone else who they decide to condemn, anyone who isn't good enough for their Christianity. Their hearts are so hardened, so asleep to the teachings of Jesus that they can't see him when he's standing right in front of them. In our gospel today, Jesus is speaking about the second coming, the end of this world. But we overlook the fact that he also said that he will be among us, and the need for our heart to be like his, not drowsy and far from his love, but like his heart, ready to love and help those around us, so that his coming among us will not catch us by surprise. While we're quoting the Catechism on immigration to justify our nation's current immigration policy, we should probably remember Jesus' words to the Pharisees regarding their own divorce policy. Because of the hardness of your hearts, He wrote you this commandment. And I would suggest that our church's official stance is in a similar vein. Because of our collective hardness of heart toward immigrants, we're given the cop-out of leaving that policy up to the government. And since lately we use up our Catholic political effort on abortion and gay marriage, we don't have any political capital left to fight for immigration policy. Our hearts are drowsy, and we look the other way. Now, I don't know if Jesus is coming back to us as Kim Davis or Brett Kavanaugh. Maybe he is. They aren't on the top of the list of people he said he would come back to us as, but he's God, so maybe. What he did say was, I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. A stranger, and you welcomed me. Naked, and you clothed me. Ill, and you cared for me. In prison, and you visited me. The question is, when we encounter Jesus, hungry, thirsty, naked, ill, and in prison, when we encounter Jesus as a stranger in need of welcome, will we help him because our heart is awake to his teachings on love and mercy, or will we tear gas him because our heart is drowsy from carousing with the bigots in our government, the bigots in our churches, the bigots in our houses, drowsy from worrying over all the anxieties and stresses of life, spun up into a healthy mistrust of all those different than us, exacerbated by the hate we allow to spew from pundits and talking heads, religious and otherwise, straight from their filthy mouth, through our ears and into our hearts. Hearts too drowsy to ward off this evil, too drowsy from worrying over all our first world problems. Brothers and sisters, pray that our hearts can be like Jesus' heart, loving like he loves, caring like he cares, forgiving like he forgives, welcoming like he welcomes. Pray that he doesn't sneak up on us because our hearts were drowsy from the ways of the world. Spend this Advent preparing for the coming of God's Son in the Nativity and preparing for his coming to us in the stranger. Spend this Advent making your heart non-drowsy, awake and alert to Jesus' loving and welcoming others as he does.